He died here, the little girl said, staring at the deactivated elevator. But when the power came back on, they found something horrifying. Let me know what you thought of this story by giving it a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments, and tell me what city you're watching from. I'd love to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The hammer struck the concrete with a metallic precision that echoed throughout the construction site on Monday morning. In Oakwood, Ohio, Richard "Rich" Montgomery, at 52, adjusted his white hard hat as he walked through the floors of the commercial building set to open in 3 weeks. His boots left prints in the fine dust covering the floor, and his critical eyes scanned every detail of the project, which represented his construction firm's largest investment in the last 5 years. "Mr. Montgomery, the schedule is on track," reported Chris, his assistant engineer, hurrying to catch up with a clipboard full of papers. "All that's left are the finishes on the top floor and the final installation of the elevator's electrical system." Rich nodded, but his attention was drawn to a small figure moving near the edge of the construction site. A little girl with dark hair and worn clothes was watching the workers' movements through the safety fence. It wasn't the first time he had seen her there, always at the same time, always with the same serious expression that seemed out of place on such a young child. The girl's name was Catherine Miller, and she was only 4 years old, though her posture and the way she observed everything around her suggested a premature maturity. She lived with her grandmother, Mrs. Mercy, a 73-year-old woman who worked as a seamstress to support them both after the tragic loss of Catherine's mother in a work accident 2 years prior. On that particular morning, something different caught Rich's eye. Catherine wasn't just watching, she was pointing persistently at the building's main elevator, the same one that had been sealed off 3 months ago after the accident that claimed the life of Julian Scott, the chief engineer responsible for the project's technical supervision. "He was gone here," Catherine said when Rich approached the fence, her words clear despite her age. "The man in the blue hard hat was gone here." A chill ran down Rich's spine. Julian had always worn a special blue hard hat, a quirk that set him apart from the other engineers. The child couldn't have known that. The accident had occurred over a weekend, and the area was supposedly sealed off. "How do you know about the man in the blue hard hat?" Rich asked, crouching to get on the girl's level. Catherine stared at him with her big, dark eyes, a look of sadness crossing her small face. "I saw things before he was gone. Men talking bad things about the building. Mommy always said to pay attention when adults talk low. It means they're hiding something." Rich's heart quickened. For the 3 months since the accident, he had fought against a persistent feeling that something wasn't right. Julian was meticulous, experienced, not the type of professional who would make basic safety mistakes. And now this child was suggesting she had witnessed something significant. Mrs. Mercy appeared, running, clearly worried about having lost sight of Catherine. "I'm so sorry, sir. She always slips away to watch the construction. She has an immense curiosity for these things." "It's no problem," Rich replied, but his eyes remained fixed on Catherine. "She mentioned seeing men talking before the accident." Mrs. Mercy's expression tensed. "Catherine, I've told you not to bother people with your stories." "They're not stories, Grandma," Catherine protested. "I really saw them. They were fighting about things that are no good in the construction." Rich felt his breath catch. In recent months, he had noticed some irregularities in the materials reports, discrepancies that his cousin Walter Vance, the site supervisor, always explained away as minor administrative errors. But now, faced with the words of a 4-year-old, these small inconsistencies began to form a disturbing pattern. "What kind of things were they saying?" Rich asked, ignoring Mrs. Mercy's uncomfortable glance. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment, as if struggling to remember. The man who isn't you was talking about swapping good things for bad things. And the man in the blue hard hat got very angry, said people were going to get hurt. The girl's words hit Rich like a punch to the gut. Walter had been at the site that weekend, something that had seemed odd at the time, but which he had accepted as extra dedication from his cousin to the project. Mrs. Mercy pulled Catherine by the hand. "Let's go, sweetie. We've caused enough trouble for the gentleman." But Rich gently held the woman's arm. "Please, let me talk with her a bit more. It could be important." Over the next half hour, Catherine recounted fragments of conversations she had overheard while hidden behind stacks of construction materials. Her memory was surprisingly precise for a child her age, and every detail she shared painted an increasingly dark picture of what was really happening on his site. Rich discovered that Catherine had lost her mother, Sarah, in a similar accident at another local construction company, scaffolding that collapsed due to substandard materials. The girl had developed a fascination with construction sites, but also a sharp instinct for sensing when something was wrong. "Mommy always said I was going to be a detective when I grew up," Catherine explained. "She said I noticed things that adults didn't see." When Mrs. Mercy and Catherine finally left, Rich stood frozen before the sealed elevator, his mind processing the implications of what he had heard. If the girl's suspicions were true, it meant Julian had been silenced for discovering serious irregularities, and that his own cousin was at the center of a corruption scheme that had cost lives. That night, Rich couldn't sleep. He went through all the reports from the last 6 months, searching for patterns he had previously ignored. And the more he investigated, the more obvious it became that Catherine was right. There was something deeply wrong happening in his company, something that threatened not only his reputation, but the safety of hundreds of people who would trust their lives to the structures he built. Worst of all was the growing certainty that, through negligence or excessive trust, in Walter, he himself had become an unwitting accomplice to crimes that cost Julian's life, and potentially others. The image of Catherine, an orphan who had lost her mother in similar circumstances, haunted his thoughts as he finally understood the true extent of the nightmare he had become entangled in. The following week brought an unusual stir to the construction site. Rich had spent the last few nights analyzing documents and cross-referencing data that didn't add up, and now he needed direct answers. He decided to make a surprise inspection of the materials warehouse, a place Walter always supervised personally, and which other employees rarely frequented. What he found there confirmed his worst fears: bags of cement with brands from different suppliers than those listed on the invoices, steel rebar with thicknesses visibly smaller than specified in the plans, and a pile of partially burned documents behind an abandoned cement mixer. Rich picked up some of the charred papers and managed to decipher fragments mentioning irregular payments and deliveries of alternative materials. As he examined the evidence, he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly pocketed the documents and pretended to be checking inventory when Walter appeared at the warehouse entrance, accompanied by 2 men Rich didn't recognize. "Rich, what a surprise to see you here," Walter said with a forced smile. "I thought you were focused on the building's finishes." "I wanted to personally check our materials stock," Rich replied, eyeing the 2 strangers. "Who are they?" "Representatives from a new supplier," Walter explained quickly. "We were negotiating better prices for future projects." But something in the men's nervous behavior and the way Walter avoided direct eye contact confirmed Rich's suspicions. When he left the warehouse, feigning normalcy, his mind was racing with plans to investigate further. That same day, Catherine appeared at the site again, this time with a small notebook where she was constantly drawing. Mrs. Mercy explained that the girl had insisted on bringing her drawings to show the construction man, as she referred to Rich. "Grandma said drawings can help people understand things," Catherine explained, opening the notebook. "I drew what I saw before the man in the blue hard hat was gone." The drawings were surprisingly detailed for a 4-year-old. Catherine had illustrated human figures in situations that clearly depicted tense conversations, with speech bubbles containing simple words like bad, danger, and money. In one drawing, she had depicted one man handing something to another, with a stack of boxes next to them marked with a red X. "What do these boxes with an X mean?" Rich asked, intrigued. "Mommy taught me that X on things means they're no good," Catherine explained. The men were swapping good boxes for boxes with an X. A chill went down Rich's spine. Catherine's childish representation described exactly what he suspected was happening: the substitution of quality materials for inadequate alternatives, with someone pocketing the price difference. Mrs. Mercy watched the interaction with growing concern. "Mr. Montgomery, ever since her mother, in past, Catherine has become obsessed with these construction things. Sometimes I worry she's creating fantasies to cope with the pain." "They're not fantasies, Grandma," Catherine insisted, with a firmness that impressed Rich. "I know the difference between real and make-believe. Mommy taught me." Rich crouched down again to the girl's level. "Catherine, do you remember anything else about that day? Any detail could be important." The girl closed her eyes, concentrating intensely. "The man who isn't you had papers. Papers with numbers. The man in the blue hard hat took the papers and got very mad. He said he was going to tell someone important. Do you remember what time this happened?" "After Grandma's lunch, when the sun gets strong," Catherine replied. "I was playing near here when I heard the loud voices." Rich did some mental calculations. The accident had occurred around 3 in the afternoon on a Saturday. If Catherine was correct, the argument between Julian and Walter had happened shortly before the fatality. At that moment, a shrill siren echoed through the site, the end-of-day signal. But instead of relief, Rich felt a growing anxiety. Every hour that passed without action meant more evidence could be destroyed, and his cousin had more time to cover his tracks. He said goodbye to Catherine and Mrs. Mercy with a promise to talk again soon. As he walked back to the construction firm's main office, Rich made a decision that would change everything. He needed to confront Walter directly, but first he needed more concrete evidence. That night, Rich secretly returned to the site, using his master key to access the local office where Walter kept the detailed reports. What he discovered there surpassed his worst expectations. Spreadsheets systematically showed the purchase of top-of-the-line materials and the delivery of inferior substitutes, with the difference in value being diverted to personal accounts. Even more disturbing was the discovery that the scheme was not limited to this one project. Documents indicated that the same pattern had occurred in at least 5 other projects over the past 2 years, including the construction where Sarah, Catherine's mother, had lost her life. As he photographed the documents with his phone, Rich heard the sound of a key in the office lock. He quickly hid behind a tall filing cabinet, trying to control his rapid breathing. Walter entered the office, accompanied by a voice Rich recognized as that of Mayor Owen Carmichael. "I need you to make sure nothing else leaks," Owen said in a threatening tone. "The accident with Julian has already drawn too much attention. If someone starts digging deep, we'll all go down." "Relax," Walter replied. "Rich is focused on the building's inauguration. He doesn't suspect a thing." "Are you sure?" "He's been asking some suppliers questions about materials." Rich felt his heart pound. They knew he was investigating. "I'll take care of it," Walter said. "If necessary, we can say Julian was the one skimming materials. A dead man can't defend himself." The conversation continued for a few more minutes, revealing the full extent of the corruption that involved not only his company, but also municipal contracts and fraudulent inspections. When the 2 men finally left, Rich remained hidden for almost an hour, processing what he had discovered. Arriving home in the early morning, Rich found a note that had been slipped under his door. The message was simple and terrifying. "Stop asking questions, or you'll end up like Julian." For the first time since he began his investigation, Rich truly understood the danger he was in. But he also understood that he could no longer back down. Julian had tried to do the right thing and paid with his life. Sarah had been a victim of the same corruption scheme. And now Catherine, an innocent child who had lost her mother, was the only witness capable of connecting all the dots of this macabre puzzle. The dawn brought a definitive decision. Rich knew he had to protect Catherine and Mrs. Mercy, but he also knew he couldn't fight this battle alone. He needed legal help and someone he could trust completely. The problem was, after discovering the mayor's involvement, he no longer knew who he could trust in the city where he had built his entire life and career. The heavy atmosphere of an impending storm dominated Oakwood on Thursday morning. Rich had gone 3 days without proper sleep, tormented by the revelations of corruption corroding his company and the veiled threat he had received. He decided he needed to act quickly before Walter realized he had been discovered. His first stop was Mrs. Mercy's house, a simple home in the South Park neighborhood, where he found Catherine playing in the small yard with dolls made from fabric scraps. The girl ran to greet him with a smile that contrasted dramatically with the gravity of the situation. "I brought more drawings," Catherine said, showing him a new notebook. "I dreamed about more things I saw that day." Mrs. Mercy appeared at the door, drying her hands on a floral apron. "Mr. Montgomery, it's good to see you. Catherine hasn't stopped talking about you. She said you're going to help find out the truth about what happened to the man in the blue hard hat." Rich felt the weight of the responsibility the girl had placed on his shoulders. "Mrs. Mercy, I need to talk to you about something very serious. It's about the safety of you both." The woman's expression changed instantly. "What's going on?" "I've discovered that there are dangerous people involved in the accident at the site. People who might try to hurt you if they find out Catherine knows important things." Mrs. Mercy pulled Catherine close to her, a protective gesture Rich recognized immediately. "Do we have to leave the city?" "Not for now," Rich replied. "But I need you to stay home for the next few days. Don't go out unnecessarily, and if someone you don't know comes here asking questions, don't open the door." Catherine, who had followed the conversation with a seriousness beyond her years, tugged on Rich's shirt sleeve. "Can I show you the new drawings? Maybe they'll help you protect more people." Catherine's new drawings were even more detailed than the previous ones. One showed the building's elevator with a large crack at the top. Another showed men carrying boxes marked with different symbols. But it was the third drawing that made Rich's blood run cold. "Catherine, who is this person?" he asked, pointing to a figure holding papers and wearing what looked like an official's hat. "The important man who came later," the girl explained. "He was very angry with the man who isn't you. He said things about money and about making other people be quiet." The description perfectly matched Mayor Owen Carmichael. Catherine had witnessed not only the argument between Julian and Walter, but also the mayor's direct involvement in the corruption scheme. At that moment, a clap of thunder echoed over the city, followed by the first drops of heavy rain. Mrs. Mercy invited Rich inside, and he took the opportunity to better explain the situation, obviously omitting the most dangerous details so as not to frighten the family further. "Mr. Montgomery," Mrs. Mercy said after hearing everything, "since we lost Sarah, Catherine and I only have each other. If you believe my granddaughter can help bring justice for that engineer and for so many other people, we will help, but I need your word that you will protect my little girl." "I promise," Rich replied, but even as he made the promise, he felt the magnitude of what he was committing to. The storm intensified drastically throughout the afternoon. Strong winds knocked down trees, and the power went out. In several neighborhoods, including the city center where the construction building was located, Rich received an urgent call from Chris informing him that the emergency system had failed and they needed to check for possible structural damage caused by the storm. When Rich arrived at the construction site, he found a scene of controlled chaos. Workers were rushing to cover equipment and exposed materials, while the torrential rain turned the site into a sea of mud. But it was as he approached the main building that he noticed something extraordinary and terrifying. The sealed elevator was working again, the internal lights were on, and the system was emitting the characteristic beeps of normal operation, despite having been without power for 3 months. Chris ran up to Rich, clearly disturbed. "Mr. Montgomery, I don't understand what's happening. When the power came back, the elevator just started working on its own, and there's one more thing." "What is it?" The doors opened for a moment, and there was something inside, something that shouldn't be there. Rich's heart raced. "What kind of thing?" "It looked like a secret compartment in the side wall. I've never seen that before." With trembling hands, Rich entered the functioning elevator. What he found there would change everything again. On the side wall, a panel had shifted, revealing a hidden space containing a metal box. Inside the box, documents were carefully organized in sealed envelopes, each marked with dates and project names. The papers revealed the full extent of Walter and Owen's scheme, falsified technical reports, proof of irregular payments, and most importantly, evidence that Julian had discovered everything and had been collecting proof for months before his death. The engineer had created a system so that if anything happened to him, all the evidence would be automatically revealed when the elevator was reactivated. Among the documents, Rich found a letter addressed specifically to him. With trembling hands, he read the words Julian had written shortly before he died. "Rich, if you are reading this, it means my worst fears have come true. Your cousin Walter has been stealing materials for 2 years, replacing safety components with dangerous alternatives. Mayor Owen not only knows about it, but receives a percentage of the profits. I tried to talk to you directly several times, but Walter intercepted my attempts. The accident that killed Sarah Miller was no accident. It was a direct result of the substandard materials provided by this scheme. There are other victims. Please use this evidence to bring justice. Trust only people from outside the city." The letter was signed and dated the same day Julian had died. Rich exited the elevator with the box of evidence, but when he reached the ground floor, he found Walter waiting for him, accompanied by 2 large men who were clearly not construction workers. "Rich, what a coincidence finding you here on a night like this," Walter said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I heard you've been messing with things that are none of your business." "Walter, we need to talk," Rich replied, hiding the box behind his body. "Yes, we really do. But not here. My friends will escort you to a more private location." Rich immediately understood he was in mortal danger. The 2 men moved toward him, but at that exact moment, another clap of thunder echoed, and the power failed again, plunging the site into total darkness. Taking advantage of the confusion, Rich ran for the site exit, still clutching the box of evidence. He heard shouts behind him and the sound of heavy footsteps in pursuit. He managed to get to his car and flee into the storm, but he knew he had crossed a line with no return. While driving through the flooded streets of Oakwood, Rich made a desperate decision. He needed to get the evidence out of the city immediately, but first, he had to ensure the safety of Catherine and Mrs. Mercy. If Walter had discovered his investigation, he would soon discover the little girl who had witnessed everything. The early morning found Rich driving on the rural roads surrounding Oakwood, the box of evidence on the passenger seat representing both his salvation and his greatest danger. He had gone to Mrs. Mercy's house at 2 in the morning, waking the family and urgently explaining that they needed to leave the city immediately. My sister lives in Bellemere, Mrs. Mercy had said, quickly packing some clothes while Catherine slept in Rich's arms. We can stay there until things are settled. Now, as the sun rose over the Ohio hills, Rich was heading towards Columbus, where he had a trusted lawyer friend who worked in the state district attorney's office. DA Marcus Fuller had been his college classmate and was one of the few people Rich could trust completely. The phone rang insistently throughout the trip, calls from Walter, from unknown numbers, and even from Mayor Owen's office. Rich ignored them all, focusing only on reaching Columbus with the evidence intact. When he arrived at Marcus's office at 9 in the morning, Rich was exhausted but determined. His friend received him immediately, noticing his extremely tense state. "Rich, you look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus said, pouring coffee. "What's going on?" Over the next 2 hours, Rich recounted the entire story, from Catherine's first drawings to the discovery of the evidence in the elevator and the chase from the previous night. Marcus analyzed every document in the box with growing disbelief and outrage. "This is much more serious than we imagined," the DA said. "We have evidence of racketeering, embezzlement, multiple counts of negligent homicide, and active corruption. With these documents, I can request preventive detention for everyone involved today." "And Catherine? Will she be safe?" "We'll put her and her grandmother in the witness protection program temporarily," Marcus replied. "But I need you to understand something, Rich. Your company will be thoroughly investigated. Even if you didn't know about the scheme, there could be legal consequences." Rich nodded gravely. "I know, but if it means other families won't go through what Catherine's family went through, I accept any consequence." As Marcus prepared the legal documents, Rich received a call from a Bellemere area code. It was Mrs. Mercy, and she sounded panicked. "Mr. Montgomery, they found us. Strange men are circling my sister's house asking questions about Catherine. We're hidden in the basement, but I'm afraid that—" The call was abruptly cut off. Despair seized Rich's chest. "Marcus, they've found Catherine and her grandmother." "Stay calm," the DA said, picking up his phone. "I'll contact the state police in Bellemere immediately, and I'll also request urgent arrest warrants." The next few hours were the most agonizing of Rich's life. While Marcus coordinated the legal operation, Rich could only think of the brave little girl who had trusted him to protect her and who was now in danger because of him. At 3 in the afternoon, Marcus's phone rang. It was the Bellemere police chief with news. "Mr. Fuller, we've located the individuals you mentioned. They are safe, but it was a close call. We arrested 2 men who were trying to break into the residence." Rich felt his legs go weak with relief, but the real surprise came 2 hours later when Marcus received a call from Oakwood. Walter and Owen had turned themselves in voluntarily, accompanied by their lawyers. "They want to make a plea deal," Marcus explained. "They're willing to confess everything and return the stolen money in exchange for reduced sentences." "Why?" Rich asked, confused. "Apparently, when they learned you had gotten Julian's evidence, they realized there was no way to hide the truth anymore. And there's more. Other business owners in the region are coming forward. Voluntarily. The scheme was much larger than we imagined." Over the following months, the investigation uncovered a corruption network that stretched across 12 counties in the region. More than 30 people were arrested, including mayors, inspectors, and business owners. Rich cooperated fully with the investigations, providing complete access to his company's records. The Montgomery construction firm was completely restructured. Rich sold his personal assets to compensate the families affected by the buildings constructed with substandard materials, a process that cost him his fortune but gave him back the ability to sleep in peace. 6 months after it all began, Rich returned to Oakwood for a special meeting. Catherine and Mrs. Mercy had returned to the city after everyone involved in the scheme was arrested. The girl, now 5, was running in the same yard where she used to play, but now with a more frequent smile and eyes that shone with renewed hope. "Mr. Rich!" Catherine shouted when she saw him arrive. "Grandma said you're going to live near us now." It was true. Rich had bought a simple house in the same neighborhood where Catherine and Mrs. Mercy lived. He no longer had his former fortune, but he had found something far more valuable. A real family. "I brought a surprise for you," Rich said, handing a package to the girl. Catherine carefully opened it and found a complete child's detective kit, magnifying glass, notepad, badge, and even a special wallet. "Now you're an official detective," Rich said, "to help other people just like you helped me." Mrs. Mercy watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Rich, after Sarah was gone, I thought we would never see happy days again, but you brought justice for our family and hope for our city." That night, during dinner in the simple but cozy house, Catherine showed off her new drawings. Now she drew birds flying free, children playing in safe construction sites, and families gathered around full tables. "You know something, Catherine?" Rich said, as she colored another drawing. "You were the bravest person I've ever met. A real detective." "And you were brave too," the girl replied, without looking up from her drawing. "Mommy always said that being brave isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared." Rich smiled, realizing he was learning about courage from a 5-year-old. Outside, the city of Oakwood breathed cleaner air, free from the corruption that had stained its structures for so long. Later, after Catherine was asleep, Rich and Mrs. Mercy talked in the small yard under the stars. "She's going to study to be a real detective when she grows up," Mrs. Mercy said, "and I know she'll be one of the best." "I'm sure of it," Rich agreed, "and I'll be here to see every step of that journey." As the stars shone over the city where he had lost a fortune but found a family, Rich understood that some constructions are far more valuable than buildings. They are constructions of the heart, built on foundations of trust, courage, and true love. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10. And thank you so much